Hello everybody, and I hope you had a great summer. Thank you once again for tuning into my YouTube channel. I know it's been a bit of a while. I'm back from my Spanish excursions now, and it was just lovely. Just relaxing by the pool, chilling with the kids, drinking a bit too much San Miguel, and definitely eating too many ice creams. Nevertheless, I wouldn't swap it for the world. I know it seems really odd, a wedding photographer taking the busiest part of the year off. But for me, while the children are still young enough to want to play the yes-no game in the swimming pool, then I guess I'm going to do it. So before we get into this week's video proper, I'll show you a couple of snapshots from our time in Spain if you want. You can fast forward if you don't want to. I only took 2 cameras with me, the tiny little GoPro, which I love when jumping about in this pool or at the beach. And I also decided to take my GFX with me as well. The incongruity of the 2 cameras is great, I suppose. I can spend time making images that I know I'll print out at the end of the year or pop on the wall with the GFX, as well as being able to not worry about things like water and sand, etc. with the GoPro. They're my little and large cameras, and I love shooting with both of them really. I only have the GoPro Hero 5 actually, not the very latest one, and this year I took a dome, one of those little glass domes that goes over the top, which I found amazing for getting those shots above and below the water. Very neat idea. I'll link to it below actually, so you can check it out if you have a GoPro. Really cool. I get asked all the time actually about underwater housing for my Fujifilm cameras, and to be honest, I've never really been that confident in any housings that I've seen. I'm sure there are many out there that will work fine, and I know my good friend Bert Stefani uses one really well, but for me, I just kind of, when I'm going underwater, I'm using a GoPro. I'll happily sit on the edge of the pool though with the GFX, and I'll stand in the water even with it, being careful of course. And the kids know that if I have the big camera, then there's no dive bombing next to me. Well, at least that's how it should be. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. It was great to spend time with Gemma's family in Spain, of course, and the weather was amazing. When I got back last Thursday, I had to travel to the Lake District for a wedding, and I spent 10 hours driving in rain and wind. Should only have been a 3-hour journey as well, traffic, and welcome back to Britain. It was certainly landing with a bump. It was a beautiful wedding though, and it's good to be back in the saddle, I suppose. So I shot that wedding actually with my X Pro 2, my X-T2, and also my X100F, which had the wide conversion lens on it. And for this particular wedding, I was shooting everything in RAW, and at one point one of the guests started chatting to me about my cameras. He was using a lovely little Leica M9 as it happened. So we had to chat, cameras and gear and all of that kind of stuff as you do. I let him have a look at my X100F as I was scrolling through some of my images. He asked me, why are you shooting everything in black and white? So I explained to him what I'm going to explain to you now. Almost everything I shoot in black and white, even if I'm shooting RAW. I know that doesn't make sense because RAW files will always be in color. That's the point of RAW, right? Unless of course you're shooting on a camera with a black and white sensor, which unfortunately the Fujifilm world there isn't. Now remember, RAW will always be in color when you start to edit it. Okay, so however, if you do have a mirrorless camera like the Fujifilm cameras, or a camera with an electronic viewfinder, I should say, you can set your in-camera profiles, film simulations, to black and white. And what you see in the viewfinder will be in black and white, and what you see in the image review on the back of your camera will be in black and white, but your RAW files will always be in color. Now, you need to be careful, unless you want your final images to be monochrome, that you aren't shooting in JPEG, just JPEG. You can set your image quality setting on your camera to RAW, or RAW plus JPEG, in which case you'll get 2 files, a RAW and a JPEG. If you set it to just shoot JPEG, there won't be any going back. So just double check that you have your image quality set to the correct setting before you start shooting RAW, if you want to do this, and you'll get going. Okay, so you're probably wondering why I'm suggesting that you shoot in black and white, even if you're shooting RAW images. So it's all about light. All about light. In monochrome, for me at least, I can see the light much better. I can get a much clearer view of the way the light is falling off, the subtleties between shadow and highlight, and it also declutters the image from the interference of colour for me. Of course, this way of shooting may not be for everybody, especially if you're shooting something where colour is critical in the composition or image construction. I don't know, maybe macro shots of flowers, for example, or wildlife, I don't know. But for me as a photographer who shoots candidly and rapidly, understanding the light is critical. And shooting in black and white immediately allows me to see the light better in the viewfinder. I'm in the studio right now, so I don't have a real world example to illustrate this with, but you can see as I move the camera around my studio that having the viewfinder in monochrome easily gives me a better identity of the light and the shadow. In colour, it's just not as clear for me. You can visually see the differences, I think, when I started shooting with my Fujifilm cameras back in 2012. This was something that was a real revelation to me. Being able to really see the light and work with the light instead of against it. I just couldn't do this in my DSLR days. Even though I could shoot black and white JPEGs in those cameras, the viewfinder was optical, and so you just didn't get to see what the camera was metering. So on that point, if you use spot metering a lot, as I do, then you'll be able to really grasp this idea and work with it in your photography. Wherever possible, I have my metering, or photometry, as it's called in the Fujifilm world, set to a function button on my X Pro 2, on the X100F. Of course, on the X-T2, the photometry is set by the physical collar dial on the top of the camera. You can see now, as I switch between metering modes, how you can get a real vision for the light and shadow. And I typically use back button focusing and a focus and recompose technique. In this case, I'm pressing the AFL button on the back of the camera to lock the focus, and then just twitching the position of the camera to take a meter reading from elsewhere in the scene. This works brilliant in spot metering, and when I half depress the shutter, you see that little blue EL indicator comes up on the viewfinder, informing me that the exposure is locked. I can then recompose the images and shoot. This allows me to make more adjustments to the metering from a micro part of the image, really. It's really cool if you're trying to make that image a little bit moodier, or you're just not quite getting the exposure you want. Real neat kind of little technique for metering. Of course, there are many metering modes and many ways to shoot, but the purpose of this little video is to explain why, when shooting in black and white, it can help you use light better. I suppose, we know that a great image comprises of good composition, good moment, and great light. If we're going to help ourselves to build those images quickly and more confidently with the aid of the camera, then it makes a lot of sense, right? I guess. Now, what happens when you bring those raw files into your computer? Well, if you bring them straight into Lightroom, you'll probably initially have a bit of a heart attack, as you'll see the black and white images, but then Lightroom will render the raw file in all its basic glory. It's just showing you the preview initially. However, if you use something like Photo Mechanic, which is a tool I use all the time, I'll link to that below also, for my selections, then you can see the contact sheet view of the images I shot on Saturday right in front of you right now. Remember, these are raw images, but Photo Mechanic is displaying the JPEG preview, which is embedded in the raw files. So that's the JPEG preview in the raw files. So even when I'm doing my selections, shooting in monochrome can help. So I can whip through the selections quickly and look for images that have a good light structure. Even if I open an image up in full detail in Photo Mechanic, it will show me the embedded JPEG preview, not the raw file itself. The images I select in Photo Mechanic can then be taken into Lightroom or Alien Skin Exposure and worked on as you wish. But if you're anything like me, you'll find shooting with light in mind at point of image creation really helps, not only with the editing process, but also with your appreciation of the light itself. All things being equal, if you can get this stuff right in camera, then you'll spend a heck of a lot less time dodging and burning, etc. in post-production after the shoot, at least from a non-creative point of view. As I said, this may not work for everybody, but it really has helped me to shoot and to respect light and shadow more, definitely. So there you go. This is why I pretty much always shoot in a black and white film simulation, even when I'm shooting raw. A very quick tip. As ever, any questions, leave them below and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm back into busy weddings now, and I'm off to Photokina in a couple of weeks. So if you're at Photokina, I'll be giving some presentations on the Fujifilm stand, I think on the Wednesday and Thursday. Do please come along and say hello if you're there. It'd be great to catch up with some of you. And yeah, thanks again. Have a happy day, and I'll see you next time.